Greetings, fellow students. Today I'm going to talk about influence, and this is basically the number that you use to buy influence in hexes surrounding your settlement. And influence of each realm, that will be a dwarf, elf, halfling or warrior realm, is equal to the number of individuals of his own race, as well as slaves of any race living there. And influence basically translates as the people you have able to work and exploit a hex. So if you have a forest hex right next to your settlement and you influence this hex, it means that the people living in a settlement go there for everyday work and, hunt or pick mushrooms or whatever, cut down trees. So this is basically what influence is. The administrator or their followers, retainers or hirelings are not considered part of the populace because they're not working like the people living there are. And of course, the distance from your settlement dramatically influences the cost that you have to spend, the influence cost for each hex. For example, if the hex is right next to your settlement, you don't pay anything for your settlement. You have the influence cost times 1. If it's only 2 hexes away, it's times 2, 3, 4, etc. And in the end, you are not going to exact any influence very far away from the settlement. And here you have a simple list of influence cost for the different, because these are NPC races for the Game Master to control. Because NPCs can of course also build domains here. And as you can tell, the different terrain types, you have different cost for each. Some cannot influence the hex at all, but of course they can still claim the hex and make it part of their realm. And you have some special features. For example, if it's a coastal hex, the cost goes down dramatically for the elf, human and savage. If it's a river, a little bit for the savage, elf and human. There's a road, etc. And here you have one, I think it's a little bit fun, impassable terrain. You cannot influence impassable terrain because you can't go there at all. However, so if you are a dwarf, or if you hire dwarfs to do it for you, you can have 40 workers of dwarfs spend a full year to tunnel into hexes under the ground, to turn them into underground hexes, or even into impassable hexes, in order to turn them into an underground hex that they can exploit normally. So this way you can actually build underground hexes, and you can do that also in impassable terrain. The purpose of influencing hexes is of course because there are resources there, and here you have like a long text with listing up the typical resources that you can find in different hexes. For example, a forest hex will see cutting of trees, collecting of firewood, resin, sap, production of charcoal, hunting, foraging, honey gathering, and even some animal husbandry. So we move on to hex income, because of course these resources will provide you with some income, and more importantly, food. Because if you can't feed your population, it is going to starve, and your settlement, instead of growing, will decline. So you have the base in monthly income from each hex. And of course, you administer these hexes, and the administrator will, his skill will influence the income and also the amount of food. So you cast a die, and this represents the administrator's ability to accurately predict problems, take necessary precautions, and administer his settlement and the land and people under its influence. Therefore, a ruler should be careful to pick his smartest, most competent followers, retainers, or at worst hirelings to administer. And of course, the die result of this will influence the income. Natural disasters and such are part of this, in the sense that if you, for example, roll a 1 for the income from this bog, well, that was a bad example, for you don't get any food from bogs. So let's say the forest instead. If I roll a 1 income for forests this month, instead of the 2 food, I will get 0, as stated in this footnote. If I roll only 2, then the amount of food is halved, or divided by 2. So if I roll a 2 here for income, I only get 1 food that month, and only 2 silver pieces. And of course you can have revolts against the administrator. If you do a terrible job, they might actually decide to revolt against your administrator and try to overthrow him. And of course you can hire a thief to enter an enemy settlement using cloak and dagger to spread dissent and increase the chance for revolt in your enemy's settlement. Thieves become incredibly useful in this expert rule set because of such things. Now, as you maybe noticed, some of these terrain hexes didn't provide much income. That is because by default there is not much in them, unless of course you find additional income in them, that is special resources. And you can find that if the hex has been cleared, and if you hire either a not a sorcerer, you can't hire them, you can hire a dwarf or a chief geologist, NPC hireling, or you can be a sorcerer or have sorcerer follows do it for you, and they will spend a month in that cleared hex to find out what type of additional resource may there be there. And you can find gold, silver, iron, copper, tin, bauxite, gems and crystals, industrial minerals and coal. Industrial minerals, that will be like limestone, granite, slate, gypsum, etc. And when you have one of these guys check out the hex for a month, you roll a die for each resource to see if it is present there. And here, if you roll a 1, you also have to roll a 1 to 4 on a d6, because it's really rare to find gold in a hill hex. And if they do find the resource, there's a guarantee that it will provide resources for d12 times d12 number of months. After that, every month you roll a d20, and on a 1 it has been depleted. And you can add an adventure site to the place, abandoned of course. You also have special hexes like coastal hexes, rivers and roads, and Jotunheimer, and these will influence the income you get from a hex. For example, you have an open hex with a d20 income. Well, you also can fish there, can't you? So you get a d12 extra, and therefore also extra food. Or if you're a dwarf, orc or halfling, you're not going to be an orc, I hope. You get only a little bit, because you can only fish from the dry land with fishing rods and such. You can't really dive for pearls or gather algae or anything, because they're afraid of water. Likewise, same thing for river. And of course a road. If you have a road in a hex, this will greatly improve your ability to exploit the hex, and therefore you gain more money from it. Silver. So you have also income from silver. For example, a coastal bog hex will generate a d4 plus a d12 silver every month. And if you have a coastal hex with a river and a road, it will generate d4 from the bog hex, d6 from the river, d8 from the road, and d12 for being coastal. And 3 food resources. So having a coastal hex here, of course, is much better. Fishing is good. Taxes, here I repeat the thing about taxes, that dwarf and humans gain 1 silver per same race inhabitant, and per month, and elf and half the same only per year. But you can also wall in your settlement, regardless of race, and set up a gate where everyone who passes through it has to pay you. Linked to this is large-scale trade, because if you have a river with no waterfalls or rapids in between, you can have income from trade, river trade, and you can of course do the same with a road. And if you're an elf or a human, you can also do the same with harbors, because they also have ships and sail on the ocean. And you can gain as much as, if you're a human or an elf, you can have like a 30% extra tax income from this. Next time I'm going to talk about settlements and how you found one yourself. Thank you for watching.